We all have those moments we wish we could just hit undo on, right? Those failures that really sting. But what if those painful lessons weren't just something to get over, but were actually the blueprint for your success? That's what we're digging into today, the core ideas from Ray Dalio's game-changing book, Principles. We're going to see how you can build your very own formula for making better decisions. So let's just start with that question right there. Seriously, think about it. What if that one moment you wish you could just erase from your history, that mistake that kept you up at night, what if that was actually the most valuable thing that ever happened to you? It's a pretty wild thought, but honestly, it's the foundation for everything we're about to cover. To really get this, we have to go back to 1982. Ray Dalio was this hotshot investor, totally convinced the economy was about to crash, and he bet everything on it. Well, he wasn't just wrong, he was spectacularly, epically wrong. He lost all of his clients' money, and then he lost all of his own. He ended up having to fire everybody and borrow $4,000 from his dad just to support his family. I mean, can you imagine? It was a complete and total public humiliation. Now, for most of us, a failure that big would be the end of the story, right? Game over. But for Dalio, hitting absolute rock bottom, well, that was just the beginning. It forced him to stare a really painful reality right in the face, a reality he'd probably been ignoring. And that painful confrontation, it became the cornerstone of his entire philosophy. This experience led him to this simple but incredibly powerful formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. See, he realized that the pain from failure isn't just something you have to suffer through. It's a signal. It's screaming at you that something is wrong. But the pain is totally useless if you don't have the reflection, that honest, sometimes brutal, process of digging in and figuring out what really went wrong. That's how pain gets turned into the fuel for progress. So, faced with this massive failure and his own fallibility, Dalio had a pretty radical idea. He decided he was done just trusting his gut. Instead, he was going to create a system, a systematic way to make sure he never made the exact same mistake twice. He was going to build his life and his company around a set of principles. So what even is a principle? Well, think of it as a fundamental truth that acts as a foundation for how you act. It's like a pre-written rule for handling a situation, a guide for navigating reality, so you're not just winging it and reacting emotionally in the moment. Dalio uses this great analogy. Principles are like recipes for success. I mean, you wouldn't try to bake a cake by just guessing the ingredients and hoping for the best, would you? Of course not. You'd follow a recipe that you know works. He argues that life and business are exactly the same. If you can figure out and write down the recipes that work, you can literally systematize making good decisions. But here's the catch. For these principles to really work, especially when you're working with other people, you need a very specific kind of environment. And Dalio built his entire company, Bridgewater Associates, on two cornerstones: radical truth and radical transparency. This basically means you commit to seeing the world exactly as it is, not how you wish it was, and then being completely open with each other about it. And this forces a fundamental choice. On one hand, we can be ego-driven. That's where our main goal is just to be right. We hide our mistakes to protect our image. On the other hand, we can be truth-driven. And here, the goal totally shifts. It's not about proving you're right. It's about everyone working together to find out what is true. Mistakes aren't things to be hidden. They're put right on the table for everyone to examine and learn from. It's a huge shift from protecting your ego to just finding the best answer. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually put it into practice? Well, Dalio turned this whole philosophy into a repeatable framework for getting anything you want. He calls it the 5-step process. He figured out that the journey to achieve anything, whether it's building a massive company or just learning to play the guitar, follows a really predictable pattern. So this isn't some fuzzy, abstract idea. It's a concrete, step-by-step process you can use over and over again. All right, here's how it works. Step 1, set clear goals. You got to know where you're going. Step 2, identify the problems that are standing in your way. And you have to be brutally honest here. Step 3, diagnose those problems to find the root cause, not just the surface level stuff. Step 4, design a plan to get around those problems. And finally, step 5, execute that plan. Do the work. And it's not a one and done thing. It's a continuous loop, an upward spiral of getting better and better. But the whole system, and I mean the entire thing, totally hinges on step 2, identifying problems. This is that moment of truth where you have to look your weaknesses and your mistakes right in the eye. If you try to skip this step, if you pretend everything's fine when it's not, the whole loop just breaks down. Progress becomes impossible. Now, Dalio didn't just keep this system to himself. He scaled it across his entire company and created this really unique culture he calls an idea meritocracy. And this is where that radical truth idea really becomes a team sport. An idea meritocracy is a really simple but powerful concept. The best ideas win, period. It doesn't matter if an idea comes from the CEO or from the brand new intern. Radical truth and transparency create an environment where ideas are judged on their merit and not on the job title of the person who came up with them. And this brings us right back to that huge mindset shift we talked about. The goal of every single meeting, every debate, is to stress test ideas, to find the absolute best way forward. It's not about you winning an argument. It's about the team collectively finding the truth. Now, this requires everyone to detach their ego from their ideas, which, let's be honest, is one of the hardest things for any human to do. So, we've walked through Dalio's journey and the incredible system he built from the ashes of his failure. But now, let's turn the camera around. Let's make this about you. How can you start applying these concepts to your own life? What are your principles? The question really isn't if you should have principles, but how do you even get started? It can feel a little abstract, I get it, but there's actually a really practical way to turn your own life experiences into a reliable guide for the future. If you want to move from just reacting to life to proactively navigating it, here's a place to start. First, just like Dalio, look back at your biggest mistakes and your biggest successes. Really dig for the root causes. Next, try to write down the criteria you used when you made those decisions. Then, turn them into simple if-then rules, like, if I feel super emotional about a decision, then I will wait 24 hours before I act. And finally, remember, this isn't set in stone, it's a living document. You have to test and refine your principles as you go. So, as we wrap this up, I'll leave you with one final question to chew on. Whether you've written them down or not, you are already operating by a set of principles. We all are. So what is one principle that already guides your decisions? Just identifying that one thing, well, that's the first step to building a more intentional and ultimately a more successful life.